We're going to use the definition of the derivative to differentiate f of x equal to cosine of x squared. Now recall the definition of the derivative, that is f prime of x is defined as the limit as h approaches 0 of f of x plus h minus f of x over h. We'll require three results that will make the computation easier. The first is the trig identity cosine of a plus b equals to cosine of a times cosine of b minus sine of a times sine of b. Second result we'll need is the limit y approaches 0 of sine of y over y. That limit is 1. And the third result is another limit as y approaches 0 of cosine of y minus 1 over y equals to 0. Now finding derivative by definition is a four-step process. So let's begin with step number 1. That is to compute and simplify f of x plus h. In our case, that is cosine of x plus h squared, which is equal to cosine of x squared plus 2x times h plus h squared. Now that's the sum of three things. Let's label x squared as a, and then the sum of the second and third term, 2xh plus h squared, let's call it b, and apply result number 1, the trig identity, which gives us cosine of x squared times cosine of 2xh plus h squared minus sine of x squared times sine of 2xh plus h squared. Let's go to step number 2. In step number 2 of this four-step process, we compute f of x plus h and subtract f of x. So we already know f of x plus h, that is cosine of x squared times cosine of 2xh plus h squared minus sine of x squared times sine of 2xh plus h squared, and then we subtract f of x, which is cosine of x squared. Notice that this first term and this term have cosine of x squared in common, so we'll go ahead and factor that out before moving on to step 3. So this gives us cosine of x squared times cosine of 2xh plus h squared minus 1, and then minus sine of x squared times sine of 2xh plus h squared. Now in step number 3, we compute the difference quotient, that is f of x plus h minus f of x divided by h. So it looks like this. It is cosine of x squared times cosine of 2xh plus h squared minus 1, and that's divided by h, and then minus the second part divided by h, which is sine of x squared times sine of 2xh plus h squared, and of course again that's divided by h. Now notice that 2x times h plus h squared is equal to h times 2x plus h. So the next thing we're going to do is multiply everything and divide everything by 2x plus h. That's because we already have h in the denominator. So here's what it looks like. This is cosine of x squared times cosine of 2xh plus h squared minus 1, and that's times 2x plus h, and in the denominator we have h times 2x plus h minus sine of x squared times sine of 2xh plus h squared times 2x plus h, and divided by h times 2x plus h. So let's do one more thing before going on to step number 4, and that is rewrite this in the following way: cosine of x squared times cosine of 2xh plus h squared minus 1 times 2x plus h, and this is divided by 2xh plus h squared minus sine of x squared times sine of 2xh plus h squared times 2x plus h, and divide that by 2xh plus h squared. Now let y equal to 2xh plus h squared. And notice that as h approaches 0, y also is going to approach 0, because when h becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, close to 0, y is h times 2x plus h, so it also clearly is heading to 0. Let's rewrite our, toward the end of step 3, let's incorporate y into the final answer for step 3. So this looks like this: it's cosine of x squared times cosine of y minus 1 times 2x plus h, and this is divided by y, minus sine of x squared times sine of y times 2x plus h, and this is divided by y as well. Let's go to step 4 and compute the limit. So step 4 is where the limit becomes, we compute the limit, and that's our derivative. So f prime of x is equal to the limit as h approaches 0 of f of x plus h minus f of x divided by h. That is, limit as h goes to 0 of step 3. We have already done all the computations, so here's what it looks like for us. Since cosine of x squared does not depend on y or h, we can just put it in front, cosine of x squared, and then we have limit y approaches 0 of cosine of y minus 1 divided by y, and then we have limit as h goes to 0 of 2x plus h, minus, similarly here, we have sine of x squared times the limit as y goes to 0 sine y divided by y, and finally limit as h approaches 0 of 2x plus h. So let's take a look at these. This limit, that's result number 3, that limit is heading to 0. And if it's heading to 0, everything else that multiplies it will be also heading to 0. Cosine of x squared, this third limit here, or the second limit here, will become 2x. So cosine x squared times 0 times 2x will head to 0. For the second part, the middle part is result number 2. That limit is heading to 1. This limit is heading to 2x. And so our final answer is, we have a negative in front. Our final answer, this is equal to negative sine x squared times 2x. So let's write it like this, minus 2x times sine of x squared, which is the final answer. That's the derivative of cosine of x squared. So let's summarize it. We started with f of x equal to cosine of x squared by the four-step process of definition of the derivative. We found that f prime of x is equal to minus 2x times sine of x squared.